everybody. Oh, I'm going to get my camera right. Let's do this. I'm sorry. I was setting up this morning and clearly my camera doesn't want to do what I want it to. I don't want to be split screen the whole day because I've got some exciting stuff for you. We're going to be working on our topic today with the song Oceans. And I'm going to try to get my camera to cooperate with me here. I bet that'll do it. Voila! Maybe. Wait for it. There. All right, now we're going to get started. How are you doing this morning? I'm really excited to bring you what's coming today. I was thinking, as many people are, about the riots, all of the things going on around our country here in the United States. And it has been a really difficult time for so many people. The thing that is frustrating me personally as a personal worshiper is that I cannot see a better time to have churches open. Those of us who have faith at the very core of our rock for life are really missing that, not only that fellowship, but that time to get together and pray for our cities, our communities, our counties, and all of the people, whether they're from our town or not, whatever the root of everything is, but to be together and to support each other through this time. And that reminded me of our topic for today, because our last episode for the singers is today. Today's episode is what your worship leader wished you knew about power teams and becoming one, even if nobody else on your team wants to be one. I'll help you get started with that today. The thing is that we can, as one person, we can make such a huge difference on our team. Just like one person, as you've seen in little instances around the country, one person can make a big difference throughout our communities. And I'm praying for you guys that your churches are back together, that you can start supporting those people that need a place to go, that need a hope outside of what we're seeing in the streets, because what is missing is our grounding in Christ and our hope in Him. Once you have that, you just don't have a desire to go out and burn things to the ground, I would think. So praying for you guys and praying for our country and our world. It's spreading all over the place. So welcome to this episode. This whole series started when I did what I usually do every year, which is to reach out to worship singers and leaders that I know, whether I know them really well or I've known them, through the internet, and just ask them one simple question. And that is, what do you want your singers to know most when they come back in the fall? Usually the fall, I go do free vocal boot camps at churches and help kind of enable singers to really get a hold on vocally what their potential is and how to get started with that. But we can't do that because of the pandemic. So because of that, I have decided to do this series. And the list changed this year. So much the things on the list, but the order of the list. That's why this year I thought it was really important to teach the topics in order that they were voted for. So if you want to know what's most important to your worship leader, go back to episode 1. And everything builds on episode 1. Episode 3 builds on episode 2. They're not uniquely separate. So I'm building up from those things, and I will refer to some things today that are in depth the other episodes. So I hope that will be helpful. In this episode today, I'm going to teach you how to build a stronger vocal team. Like I said, even if you're the only one who cares. It's usually not the case, but a lot of times, having been there, it's felt that way, like I was the only one that wanted to make this team better, wished it was better. I'm going to help you get a start on that. I'm also going to teach you what the roles are. What is a lead singer supposed to do? What is a background singer supposed to do? Now, I've seen other information out there here and there and at worship conferences on this topic, and I believe I'm going to give you some things you haven't heard anywhere else, because my information is not coming from just what we do in a worship service, but as a professional lead singer and as a professional backup singer and studio singer, I've learned what those roles really mean. Not only what your responsibilities are, but how to make them very excellent enough that it's worth being paid for. And I believe if we can do that, which I know we can, we should be doing that in the church. Just that most people that speak on this topic don't have that background. And so I'm hoping to bring something fresh and new to you on that. We're also in our VocalQuickWinTip. We're going to give you a 2-step way to check your blend personally and on your team when you go back, start worship back up if you haven't already. And then at the very end, I'm going to go through everything I've taught you in this series and how you can put it into place so that you can really make it actionable and really have a major impact on your team. And please share whatever you've learned that's been an impact to you. Share that to your people. All right, let me get one screen out of my way. There we go. All right, let's get going. How do we build a power team? Usually we think this is the worship leader's job. They just ask the right people, and then the people just show up and just do great things. But what if your church is not a mega church or a very large church and you don't have a lot of talented singers to pick from? Better yet, what if your church is a church that has a ton of great singers to pick from? If you're in a recording hub of the country like Tennessee, Nashville, LA, New York, Chicago even. If you're in one of those places, you probably have professional singers that go to your church. But how do you pick the ones that will serve? And how do you sing alongside those that may be very vocally talented, but be missing a lot of the elements we talked about earlier in the series? You have to work with all those people in order to make a power team. We grow as a team. And I learned this the hard way by investing in each other and investing in our common goal. As both just a regular person who's been a part of, just being a person on team, leading a worship team, leading the vocal team, whatever, through tons of churches in my life. And then also what really, really wised me up was my job as an interim worship leader with a special, unique purpose. And that was to go in when churches had been split and decimated and regroup a vocal team out of that after everybody is hating each other and divisiveness has taken hold, to come in and bring vocal excellence out of that. That taught me a whole lot about what goes on in our churches and how we internalize things as singers. And the teams that I have been most fulfilled in, at the end, I'm going to tell you the story of the team, not the best team I've ever been on, but the one that changed, the team that was most life-changing for me. I'm going to tell you about that and what that included at the end, because that really informed a lot of the information too that I'm going to give you. We lead by investing. Now, think about all the people on your worship team. Worship teams past. Think about individual faces. Who have you wanted to spend time with? Who have you not wanted to spend time with? There's probably both on most teams. Some people you would just like to just politely nod and move by. Other people you just wish you just had coffee time for 6 hours after service to catch up, right? But we find that we build strong teams by investing two different ways. And I'm going to give you those ways. This is a concept that I teach my professional singers and definitely all my worship leaders. That is that have you ever heard the phrase, teach one, reach one, that sort of thing? Well, we can do that in our worship team. We can teach other people in our team. Now, if you think I don't have anything to teach, I haven't even been in a team long, or I've been here forever, but those people aren't open to instruction, even if I know something, let me help you find a way around that, because there really is. When we think about teaching other people on our team, helping them out, we're not talking about telling them what to do, helping them out, helping them to grow, and helping them to discover things that have been really eye-opening for you. We do that in a few different ways. This should really come not just from musically, you should do this. I've done that before. It doesn't work really well. I was young. I hope I was. Maybe I did it later. I don't know. Hindsight is 20/20. When we teach other people through what we've learned about worship, about personal worship, about all of the things we've talked about vocal confidence, about strength, power, and everything that we've learned throughout our time and in this series, the first thing we lead with when we impact our team is our personality. Everybody's got a very unique personality, and that is an incredible in for you to bond with your team. Some people are just naturally prone to kindness. You can pick them out. Who are the kind people? Who are the prayer warriors? Who are the people that are really good at connecting with other people? Who are the action-based people? Think about what your personality is, because through that gifting of your unique personality, those are the ways that you can impact those on your team, to really connect with them and to invest in them. And trust me, when you invest in them, they all start investing in you. And I'll show you an example at the end in my story. The second avenue we want to connect with our team in after personality is our life skills. Think about this. Are you a cook? Do you like crafting? Do you fix cars? Do you do construction? Are you an accountant? What are your life skills? Those are incredible opportunities to bond with your team. You'll see needs. If you're talking with your team, somebody needs their car fixed. You can say, let me help you with that. A simple act of offering your life skills to somebody that you serve with can really just melt down even huge barriers. We're called to love we're called to love one another, and it's very easier said than done. But these are some practical ways. Think about your personality. How does God gifted me in a way that I can impact other people and find a connection point with those people maybe I'm not close to? Then what are my life skills? What can I offer up? Can I bring brownies for everyone? Everybody will love you if you bring some good cookies. I cannot cook. I tell people my gift to you is me not cooking for you, and they don't know how true it is. So after that, we have very last our music skills. And that means, what are you good at? Now, it doesn't mean you have to be the greatest singer on the team. Even if you are the greatest singer on the team, there's some things that you feel you've got down pat, and there's some things you're not sure. You're just kind of getting by with. I did that as a professional. I think we all have things, as far as I know, for the rest of our life that we're working on. We should not have arrived, or else we're not looking for things, or we don't know what else is there to accomplish. So what is it that you feel you really are comfortable with, that you feel would really help other people? Is it timing? Is it the fact that you tap your big toe and that's how it keeps you on time? Maybe when you're on team with that person that kind of struggles with timing, you can be really empathetic and say, man, I struggled with that too. You know what my secret is? I tap my toe. You probably won't even see me doing it, but if you look, you'll see me tapping my toe. That's how I stay on rhythm. And just that little expression of I've been there too, and here's what I've learned, and here's what's helped me, can give other people a really good idea and help them to excel. And when someone doesn't come at us and say, your rhythm is way off, just tap your toe, but says it that way, then we really become endeared to that person, which is something really our common goal of worship should do. And a lot of churches, it just doesn't, because we have personality issues. We have conflicts of ego sometimes, but being able to break them down in that way makes it really accessible. There probably isn't anybody on your worship team or on the worst worship team you've ever been on or can be on in the future that wouldn't respond to you connecting to them with your God-given personality, with your life skills when there's a need or there's an opportunity for you to serve the team in any way that you have skills in, and to help explain what you've learned musically and how it's helped you. Share those things. Not the things you're not sure about yet because it might confuse somebody else, but the things that you're like, man, I see them struggling with something I used to do. Well, make that an opportunity. We can also do one other thing. Instead of just teach one, reach one, I teach my singers to teach what you know through those three avenues, through your personality, connect through that, connect through your life skills, and the things that have really been obstacle movers for you vocally or in the music area. Make those stories to help another singer. That's how you can teach someone else to be better. Then I would suggest that at least as much as you do that, you learn. There is something that we can learn from everyone on our team, whether they want to teach us or not. But what happens when we do this is it becomes infectious. You do one thing, you serve with your personality, your skills, your musical things, you share your experiences. You watch over time, other people will start doing this. It's like a little flame that catches fire. It's really cool to watch. Now let's take a look at the learning part. Because as much as we help someone else to become better, we can learn things from other people. We can learn from the different personalities. And you know which ones I'm talking about. It's the ones that are difficult to be on team with. I've been blessed to be on a couple teams where there weren't any. And I thought this will be a perfect team. Turns out it wasn't, but it is a great thing. So if you've got a team that could potentially be great, but there's just a couple people you're just not thrilled about being on team with, I want you to take heart because this will make a difference in your team. You can start learning from other people's personality. Identify things in other people's personality that maybe you've prayed about in your own. I have my entire life prayed to stop talking so much, and then I got my voice taken away twice, and I reversed that prayer pretty quickly. Now I'm fine talking too much. I have prayed just as long to learn to be a true friend. I've had a couple really, really close friends that are just have that kindness gene. And they're so compassionate, so caring. They're so quick to pray for people. And that's not my first thought. What is it in the other personalities of people on your team that God can use to make you better? When you watch how they react in different things, sometimes it's your worship leader, sometimes it's someone on your vocal team or in your band. When you see them react to something, you go, man, that was nice. That's probably because that's something that would be nice for you to have in your personality too. Let God use that to learn. Also learn from other people's life skills. If somebody else has an accountant background, chances are people are pretty free to ask tax advice. But what about all the other life skills that everybody else in your team has? Start taking an interest in what they're good at. Find out what they're good at if you don't know. I've been on teams before where no one talks, and you're like a year into it, and I don't know what anybody's even real personality is. And that's really sad because we can learn so much from each other. Start asking, what do you love to do? Not just what you do for work. And that'll spur questions for things you might want to learn. You might want to know. You can grow in that avenue. And that also bonds us together as individuals and as a team, which is a really cool thing. And the last category, again, is music, personality, life skills, and music. We can grow in those areas. When you see someone doing something, you're like, man, I wish I had that. Take a chance during rehearsal and say, how is that so easy for you? Now, warning, like I said in another episode, you may get the answer, I don't know, I've just always been good. And don't let that dissuade you. It just means they're not quite sure how they do it. It's just not ever been a challenge for them. But start asking questions. How do you stay on time? I'm having time with this. Man, that note goes flat. How do you hit it? Now, the advice they give you may not help at all. That's okay because you've started to bond with that person. When people ask our advice, we tend to like them more. It's just true. It's human nature. So ask. And in the process of asking musical things, you may grab onto some really valuable information that will help you to grow as a musician and singer. If you don't, toss it away and know that the value that you got was in connecting with that person and taking your relationship one step deeper. My story at the end is really going to explain this stuff. When you start doing this as the only person on your team, others in your team will follow your example. Once I learned this, and not as defined as I have it now, of course, but once I learned this lesson through the team story I'm going to tell you about, I started testing it out in other worship teams that I found to be disappointing. And I'll be honest with you, it seemed to me that the bigger the worship team, the bigger the church, the less connected all the people were. The people were no less wonderful, no less flawed than in small churches I'd been in, probably way more talented, but not nearly as connected as a team. We can share the same goal on a team and be strangers, and that benefits no one. Because when people look at us on the platform, our job is to be lead worshipers. It's not to be, oh, in this section of heaven, I bet it looks like that. In that section of heaven, I bet it looks like that. But what is a little peek of heaven? Look at all these people up there. And there is a magic that happens when we worship together and we are close. Doesn't mean you have to be BFFs with everybody. But when we have invested in each other as people, and then we happen to be on a team, it doesn't take any more time than you're already spending with your team to do these things. All right. I'm going to tell you how God taught me the value of taking the least likable option. I was in my 20s. I was in this team in Kansas City. And I really didn't want to come forward because, this has probably happened to you. You go to a church and you're like, they don't need me. They got plenty of good singers. It's all good. Hey, Faith. So I wanted to serve, though, and I waited for a long time because it's like they've got all the bases covered. Why do they need me? Then I realized I just want to be worshiping. I kind of have an issue because I'm a loud person, and my husband has said to me a lot earlier in our marriage that it is disrupting to other people around us if I'm worshiping in the seats because I'm so freaking loud. He's like, you need to be up on stage so far away from people's ears that you don't make them stop singing because you're so loud. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. So then I had I don't want to sing freely in the seats. So I thought, I want to worship freely. And the place for a loud person to worship freely, I guess, is in the team. So I volunteered for the team. I got there and I found that the worship leader, we like had the same exact personality type. Have you ever met someone and it was like they were a part of your family, but you'd never known it? You just synced instantly. This happened with the worship leader and I. It's just like we came from the same family, and my sarcasm, my comments were just like he'd start a joke and I'd finish. It was my first time on team. I was young and stupid. I should have kept my mouth shut. But what I didn't realize is in this worship team, there were a lot of different personalities. And I call this the diva, the bully, and me. What I learned in this team that changed the way I look at other teams. In this worship team was a diva. She was a professional theater singer. She had a very huge amount of, vocal degrees, and she had done opera and she had done theater. She was really good and she had done a lot of things. She'd done acting. She was very well established and very comfortable in her skill set. And because of that, she kind of came off. And I always thought at the beginning, she just thought less of everybody else because they didn't know as much as she knew. I don't know if she really felt that way or not, but that's the way it seemed to me. And then I found out after connecting with that worship leader right away that there was a bully in the team. There was a short little blonde, Susan. And Susan got this very visible, angry frown on her face and just stared me down. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Of course, I got older. I realized, stop talking. Still learning that one. But she made the angriest faces at me once, my first time. And then when we took a break from rehearsal, she like whizzed over to me, got in my face. She goes, do you know him? Like the worship leader. And I said, no, we've just met. Then why are you talking to him like that? And I'm like really taken aback. So I will admit I was not smart. I stumbled in this, but I learned a lot. God let me stumble into this on my face. I'm just a cheery, optimistic person. I always have been a little over the top optimistic. So I just decided it's fun for me to take the person who hates me most and make them my best friend. So I decided that day I was going to make Susan my best friend, whether she liked it or not. So I just started doing everything I could think of. At the time, that was just every time she asked me an angry question, I would turn around and I'd say, oh, I'm doing it because of this. What do you think about that? I would just ask her opinion. And she hated me, probably for a good few months. She really hated me. Found out later she hated me because she was really close. Like she had a lot of things that clicked with the worship leader and they were like really good friends. So I was kind of interfering on her turf and coming as a stranger and skipping in line. In the friendship line with the worship leader is what triggered that in her. But I decided I was going to make her my best friend. And then when she started becoming my friend, she started softening. And this was months into it. At that point, the bully, the diva, and me were all put on the worship arts leadership team to decide the direction of the team and the things we were going to do and how we were going to train people up and make everybody excellent. So the worship arts leadership team went on a little retreat for the weekend to kind of put the team together and our expectations and our goals and check our personal worship. And if in one of the previous episodes, I talked about when I learned, the first time I ever learned what worship actually means, the definition, and how that even applies to us as believers was on this retreat. So it had life-changing effects on me. We went on this retreat. By then, Susan and I had become decent friends. She wasn't my BFF yet, but that came. And we were getting along now because she realized I really just was just like her, but much more of a happy puppy kind of personality, had trouble holding myself back. So I wasn't trying to, edge into her relationship with her friend, the worship leader. So we had become closer, but we both were bothered by the fact that we had a diva. And the diva was on the worship arts leadership team. Now, the diva had more background and more education and more experience than any of us. I had professional singing experience, but I'd done a little bit in theater, but not professionally. So I don't have a vocal degree. She had a couple. So it seemed intimidating to the rest of us. And she was really very comfortable in everything she knew and kind of looked at us like we were stupid. That's the way it felt to us. So when we're on this worship arts leadership retreat and we're talking about, now the bully and I are friends, and we're talking about the diva. What is it with the diva and what is her issue? It was in that discussion when we talked about the definition of worship, what it means. And I'm not going into that because that was really great stuff. And that's in one of the first couple episodes, I think the first one. But we talked about that, it kind of melted all of our hearts. And we just started sharing things that we didn't like about each other and how that was an obstacle to us as worshipers. I've never been in another team where there was an opportunity to feel comfortable, to tell other people what they were doing that was an obstacle to my worship. Now, I'll be honest. A lot of times people have felt in the past are doing things as obstacles to my worship, but they weren't meaning to. I've been an obstacle. I found out in that time. I'd done some things that were an obstacle to people's worship, and I didn't mean to. But having that opportunity to just be really real with each other, to connect as individuals, allowed us to, that team went forward and did some powerful things. So in this time where we're talking about worship, we went around and we said, what are the things in the personalities of other people on the leadership team that have been a struggle for you, so that we can get them out there and address them and not have any of this backbiting stuff that happens in the cliques. And we didn't want any of that in that church. It was so great. And Susan and I kind of went on the attack when I look back at it. Right then we thought we were telling our truth. But when I look back, it was a little attackish. And we basically told her, look, you know a lot, you've been a lot of places, but you kind of come down on the rest of us. And it looks like you're smarter than the rest of us, makes us not really want to work with you or ask your opinion. And if I could do that again, I'd do it differently. But because of the mode that we were in, we had been studying worship. We had been praying together as a team. We had been being very real about a lot of things. Because of that environment, we were real with our personalities, with our skills, and with our music. Then we could feel free to say that. And her response to us was so enlightening. Once we realized where she was coming from and the fact that she never realized, like a lot of times I haven't realized, that maybe I've come across as really overbearing and taking somebody else's, what was their light in the worship team. And that's what I did to Susan by being a little too eager. So I got to learn that about myself. Once she learned that what she was very rightly proud about, all of her experience and all of her background, when she realized that the way it was coming across was to put a damper on the rest of us, she said, guys, I'm happy to help. I want to help with what I know, but I don't want it to come across like that. And it was such a uniting time in our worship team. You're probably in a team that maybe hasn't had a retreat. Maybe you've had one, but you haven't had a real time like that. And I'll be honest with you, I've been on probably between work and just moving around and being in different churches, I've probably been on at least 2-3 dozen worship teams after that experience. And I've never been on another team since then that kind of environment happened in. I sure hope it happens for you. But you know what? You don't have to wait for it to happen. It got irritating to me that no other worship team did it. So I started thinking, what if I could do this on my own? What if I could make that kind of difference? Just one person at a time. Let's see if it's possible. So I started doing what I've laid out in this plan to connect, to help other people with my natural personality, my life skills when someone needs something that I happen to know how to do, and my musical skills. But at the same time, engage those people, every single one, touch everybody on your team, whether you know them well or you know them not at all, or they tick you off. Every single person, touch them by learning, asking, things that their personality lends to that maybe yours doesn't. Learn from them their life skills. Maybe maybe I'm attempting to cook real for the first time. I found that I can smoke meat in a smoker because it doesn't rely on me. That's the only thing I can do. I can microwave. I can crockpot, Instapot. But if I wanted to do a real recipe, I know people that have been on worship teams that I could go to and say, so how much salt is too much salt? Now, I may never listen to them because clearly I'm still not a good cook, but they have life skills. And just that exchange will make us closer. It will make another connection point. And then learning when you ask someone another musical question because you don't understand, just expect that 50-50 chances they're going to say something that is not said the way that you learn or is said in a way that you don't understand. It doesn't mean it's not real, or maybe they say it in a way that's not even helpful. That's okay. Because the value of that is that you may get something that is useful musically, but you are guaranteed to make a connection point with those team members. It's like a web. Every connection point that you shoot out with your team to help teach someone else through your personality, your skills, and your music knowledge, and to learn in those 3 areas connects these webs, and it just pulls your team closer and closer. And guess what happens? Your individual goal of worship becomes your united goal, because you probably respect each other more now. We respect people that take the time to get to know us. and pray for us. Have you ever fallen into the hole I've been in where I'm praying for the other people in team, but I'm praying that they'll stop annoying me? Really, I mean, that's the goal of my prayer. Lord, you know that diva is just so full of herself. Just bring her down a peg. I mean, in the love of Jesus. That's pretty much that was my prayer. I'm just saying. And the bully, I said, Jesus, help me be her best friend. And it turned out that was a good prayer. I don't think I meant it that way. I meant it like, help me to conquer the bully. But God knew how to use it. He's real good at that kind of stuff. Now, let's take a look at the roles in worship leadership. And of course, my disclaimer is that the structures of all worship gatherings, all churches and fellowships varies dramatically. I still can't put, after everybody goes to the same worship conferences, I still can't find any unifying thread in how different churches lead their worship and set roles and responsibilities. So that's really, really hard for me, because when I've gone in as a person that is brought in to unite a broken team, and I don't know any of those people, I find I don't have any structure to build from. And then you kind of have to make up one. So what I'm going to give you today comes from my time doing that, rebuilding broken teams, not knowing anyone, and also from my experience as both a professional lead singer and a professional backup singer. I'm going to give you tips that are going to let you have the freedom and the result of being able to do that level of work. And it isn't really hard like the rest of the stuff I've taught you. It all comes down to, do I know that the information I'm learning works? Is it proven? And do I have actionable steps so that I can actually use it, not just think it's a good idea? So I would challenge you to think about lead singers and backup singers in these ways. The lead singer's job, and this applies to you if you sing a solo, a half of a verse one time in a song, or if you're the worship leader, part-time or full-time, this applies to everybody. The person who is singing the melody, the one that is out front in front of everyone else, is not the star. I'll tell you what really happens in the whole dichotomy of lead and backup. The lead singer is responsible for, well, obviously the words. And I'll tell you a little backup tip about that in a second. They're responsible to know the words. This is what I struggle with most as a lead worshiper on a solo, to make sure you have the words when you're closing your eyes, you know what the words are. To be responsible for the rhythm of the song. That means trying not to rush ahead, trying not to slow down, and I'll go into that when that goes to the next step in a minute too. The person who is leading the melody is also responsible for the phrasing. This means how long you sing before you take a breath. They set the phrasing, and they set where you pause. The pauses, how far you go to take a breath, when you pause and back off. They are responsible, and I bet if you've sung a solo, you didn't know you're responsible for all that stuff. But the job of a lead singer is to set those things. That is their job. And words. It's so easy to accidentally start the wrong verse when you've sung a song so many times and you're in the chorus and the chorus is doubled and you can't remember what verse you're at. That's when we peek, not look, not stare, not watch exclusively the slides or the words on your monitor. It's where we peek. And this is where what I talked about before about circling the words that you miss becomes a visual reminder. Even when I have my eyes closed and I'm worshiping, I can see in my mind's eye, I can see where I circled on the lyrics, the words I tend to miss. And it's been a huge improvement for me on the words. So if the person who is leading the melody, the soloist, whether that's for a line or every single song, is responsible for leading the melody, the words, the rhythm, the phrasing, where the pauses are, and I almost forgot to mention dynamics, when things get big, when things get small. They are responsible for those things. If you've led a song, a solo, or an entire team, where do you pull from for those things? Episode number 1. Just like everybody else on the team, we pull from our naked worship. We take the author's song. We find our story in that, just everything we've gone through so far. So if you want to know where all these things come from, how do I decide if I'm rushing ahead or slowing down, when I'm going to get big? Oh, I copy the MP3. No. Don't copy the MP3. See preceding episodes on why that is the worst thing a singer can do. And I just want to go around and send, if it were appropriate and it would work, which it wouldn't. Hey, Melissa, I would send emails to everybody say, stop memorizing the MP3, but it wouldn't work because I'm not connected to them. But you'll be connected to your team, so you can tell them that for me. Okay. All right. So if we are singing backup, and if you ever sang a solo, you're singing backup sometimes. Some people call this backgrounds. Some people call it the team singers. Terms don't matter. They change with the whip of a wind. But the people who are not singing the lead, even if you're singing the lead melody, but you're not leading that song, there's usually one voice that's louder than the rest. Usually it's the worship leader. Sometimes it's someone in team. There's this whole thing now to split all the leading between people in the team because that's supposed to do something magical. I just kind of think everybody just rushing to do one thing like it's going to accomplish the goal is a little short-sighted, because if you're not creating your story out of the author's story and not singing from your depth of personal worship, it really doesn't matter who leads that song. It doesn't matter if it's everybody gets one word or one person always does the same thing. The goal is personal worship brought out to minister through corporate worship. Whoever can do that should be singing the solo. That's my 2 cents. All right. So we're not singing the lead. Let's say we're singing the melody even, but we're singing in addition to the person who is leading that melody. Our job, by the way, you probably didn't know this, but having worked as a professional backup singer, it is the hardest job as a singer. So if you have ever sung backup, especially harmony, do this right now. You are so good. You don't even know how good you are. You have accomplished so much. Just do that, because you don't even know how hard being a backup is. Now, I'm going to tell you the responsibilities of a backup singer, and then you're going to see some of those things I've done not knowing that was my responsibility. And when you find one of those, do that. But now you know it's your job. It's the job definition of a backup singer. All right? This is what we are responsible for when we are not leading the melody of a song. We're responsible. We have to blend. Yes, there's all these words. We need to blend. We need to not have obstacles to the blend, and that's what we hear about. But the job of a backup singer is to make the lead singer sound good. Did you know that? Your entire job is to make them sound better. This is hard when you're thinking, man, I wanted that solo. I thought I was going to get it. Been there. Just saying, you could not have a fault in a worship team that I haven't been through probably a couple times. I'm a very slow learner, and Jesus has had to walk me through some hard roads. I don't know why he made me so stubborn. I guess he wanted me to share all my great lessons with you. I'm guessing. I don't know. I just know that I would be a miserable person if Jesus weren't in my life, because I'm a really hard-headed person. As a backup singer, I want you to think of yourself this way. Okay. Post if you're in here live, just give me a hands up, a heart, a something if you've ever sung harmony or backup to somebody else singing lead. Come on, I should see them by now, right? If you've been on a worship team, you've sung backup at some point. You weren't the lead singer, unless you're the worship leader for your entire life, but now you're probably handing off solos to other people because someone at a conference told people to, and now everyone's doing it. Because that's magic. I don't know how. Here's the thing. When you think about yourself and you're singing backup and you're like, I hate this stupid harmony. I don't know why they don't change it. I don't understand why the phrasing is this way. I want you to remember that you're in great company, because backup singers are the hardest type of singer to be. And I'll prove it. You are in the company of greatness. Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Elton John, Phil Collins, Luther Vandross, and Pink. I can give you a ton of examples. People that became great singers because they worked as backup singers for years. It is amazing what you learn as a backup singer. Most challenging job I had as a backup singer was in a Steely Dan band, because the harmonies are crazy complex, which I happen to just absolutely love. And your phrasing can't be off a split second. Everything has to be like one voice with 5 different notes. And that's kind of like a race I like to run. But you have to learn amazing things. You have to learn how to make that person look good. That is your job. Well, how do you do it? Here's the thing. And know this next time you lead a solo, so that it'll free you up. We talked about freedom on the platform in the last episode. When you are singing lead, whether it's one word, I hope not, one line, one verse, at least I hope, or doing the entire song. When your story leads you, we talked about this in styling, which was in telling your story. When your personal story drives you to your styling, and again, I explained that all in the other episode, the Holy Spirit will lead you places. Sometimes you will hold a note out longer than you anticipated. Sometimes you will stop where you didn't plan on stopping. Sometimes you will go and do a vocal thing that you didn't know was in there. Our story it's the only type of singing where our story spiritually leads our styling. When I train singers, their story always leads their styling. But really, it doesn't matter if you sing other stuff that way or not. In worship music, everything you do vocally should not come off the MP3 because that was someone telling their story and letting God lead them vocally where that story led them. You can't retell their story. It's just a cheap secondhand story. Tell your own. If you're leading, you have the freedom to let that story go where God leads you to. Now, if you're going to go way off, we talked about this already, how to pre-check that if you're not sure that's appropriate in your church. Just check it if you're not sure so that we can not worry about that. We don't want to be up there and say, oh, I went here. I hope they don't think I'm too showboaty. You'll have that taken care of ahead of time. We remove that obstacle. So we're on the backup team now, and we're saying, okay, so I'm not leading this song or anything on this team. How do I make that lead singer sound good? How can I be good enough to make that singer sound good? I've tested this too because I love testing things. I think everything should be proven. So I test things, and I've had lots of weird opportunities to test things. When I started changing my mind, and I told you the story of how I viewed musical worship changed to how I view professional music as a singer. I told you that story, but after that happened, I started testing these things out, and I thought, if I do in worship team the responsibility that I do as a backup singer professionally, will it change the amount of compliments the lead singer gets? Because what is our parameter of success? Does the lead singer sound better? Do they sound better? They'll be getting more compliments. It takes a while to test this, I found, because, but in churches where I really knew people, I found it's true. They do start getting more compliments. And I'm like, then I'm doing my job. That is your compliment when they get a compliment because you contribute to their success. That's kind of a cool thing because they get cool compliments. They should all be shared. That's the thing about being a backup singer. You get all the work and not many compliments, but it's just like somebody who builds an airplane. It's the person who launches the airplane that gets the big party, but you built it. And it is hugely satisfying. Very tough. So how do we blend better? Number one, remove all vibrato. We talked about this in Vocal Control, the episode. We talked about weakness, unstable notes that fall apart, and vibrato. The reason I tackled that in the front was because it was in order of what worship leaders wanted you to know, but also because it is essential to being a good backup singer. If the notes fall apart, but they're holding a note out, you've not done your job. I've not done my job. Even if they hold a note out and they go into vibrato, even a really wonky, wide vibrato, well, if it's wide and beautiful, it's not wonky. Our job is still to hold a straight note. We hold the straight note as a background to shine that beautiful vibrato they have. That's what makes it look beautiful. It's not that we cut off that word because that measure was over, or that quarter note was done, so we stop singing there and then they're on their own, and then they'll get compliments because that looked cool. But if your team will come underneath that and hold that note out, and as they go into their flitty little thing, their dynamics that they put into it, you're going to notice are getting bigger. So you press into that note even more. That note you're holding out gets bigger. It's like a whole different arrangement of a recording. It becomes so much more beautiful, and you have the power to do that simply by taking your vibrato out and only stopping notes when they stop, getting bigger with your note when they get bigger, and really keeping an eye on how you're mimicking what they do as a straight bass line to make it beautiful for them. You pave the path for them to run on, that they could run around, but they'd be running around in the rocks and the mountain. But we pave the path as backup singers so that it is smooth running for them, and so they sound great. That is our job. It's not easy. The second thing that we need to do that I find I have yet to hear, and I've had some worship leaders that were professional singers. So I kind of thought if I just find me a team that had a professional singer leading, they would just fix all these things. But no one's ever talked about it. And honestly, I've moved enough 10 times now that I'm new at church enough that you're like, it's not my place to go in and say, we should be fixing this. It would sound so much better. That's part of the problem of moving. About the time you realize people will take your opinion for years. Anyway, that's why I tell you what to do. Just saying. I'm hoping you listen. The second thing we have to do on top of removing all vibrato, making sure our notes are stable so we can hang on, is follow the leader. We don't follow the leader because we're worshiping, right? Because it's hard. You're supposed to do this, and authentically worship and raise your hands. And some people want you to jump up and down because that's the kind of worship they're doing. And while that may be the result of what they want their worship to look like, that comes out of the things that we don't talk about, like our naked worship, like the fact that a song is somebody else's story. It's not yours. You can't just pick it up and be really deeply worshipful all the time. It becomes old. Can I just get an agreement that once you sing a beautiful song that you were really moved by about 400 times, it loses its impact? If we go through singing the story, not the song, like I discussed in earlier episodes, that will not happen. That means our authentic worship is always there. Authentic worship drives our styling, drives our dynamics. And so that goes where it wants to. It may drive you to jump up and down, then jump up and down if that's appropriate in your church. But it's the things behind it that drive those things. They may want the end result. But most of the time, the people that decide what they want it to look like are on the board. And they're not musicians. And sometimes they're musicians, but not people that really have approached it this way. When we follow our leader, this is what it means. We have to remove the sibilance. I heard that at my check. We have to remove the sibilance from words. That means when a word ends in something that can sound like a leaky tire, like Jesus, we adore you. No, he or she can sing Jesus, I adore you. They can do whatever they want because they're being led, hopefully, by their personal worship. But when we are there to set the background to make them look good, we have to say, Jesus, I adore you. Z is there, but it's like 1/10 of its normal size. We have to remove those things and things that start with, really noisy sounds like, let's see, God. God is another one. If we say, our God is an awesome God, way back, and they're singing it, they may not be singing the same rhythm as us. If we sing God a split hair before they do, it's going to be noisy. But if we go, our God is an awesome God, he reigns. S is tiny, G is tiny, not gone, but we minimize those so that they are maximized. And so we don't obstruct from the whole leading of the congregation. When a congregation, whether they're musically inclined or not, hears it instantly confuses them about where they're supposed to go. And that is an obstacle to their personal worship. So when we know these things, they can really be easily removed. You don't take those things out, regardless of what you've heard. When you're worshiping, you've got to say the words. You can't be phonetically changing everything or it becomes just another checklist thing. And we don't do checklists in worship. We do worship in worship. We let it lead us, but we get in the habit of making the hard beginnings and ends of words that might stick out tiny. Think of the word as 16 size font and the beginnings and the ends, if they're noisy, like a g or whatever you find sticks out. Listen for someone else to do it. When they make a mistake, make a note. That's one. Just think of those being a size 6 font. Still there, but really unimportant. And that will really help. We have to watch their phrasing. That means if they're going to hold a note, guess what? You get to hold the note. If they're going to sing 3 lines in a row, hope you got stability. Go back in that episode and find out how to get it. Keep your vibrato out. If you find, and I'll give you a special little tip, if you find that your vibrato is getting away from you, this happens especially if we don't have enough chord closure, which happens when we're singing soft, which most people sing soft the wrong way on team, and that causes this problem. We talked about that in the last episode. If you find that you meant to hold that note and you practice holding that note, but in that note you start getting wobbly, then thank you. Then just worshipfully back off of your mic. As soon as you notice it's happening to your mic, you just kind of worshipfully back off from the mic. That will allow the sound underneath everybody else that's holding it to be stable. And if no one else is holding it and you all back off, it is much less distracting to people's worship than if your vibrato gets in there. Number one blend killer is vibrato. This is why they think there's a certain age, especially women, can't serve in worship team. By they, I mean a majority of leaders as taught through all these workshops and conferences. And that is literally scientifically, anatomically just untrue. It's just that we don't know how to control our vibrato, and they don't know we can. So it's not like anybody hates us. It's just people don't know. That's why I do what I do. We have to follow how they breathe. We have to follow their dynamics. We get louder when they get louder. And I'm going to tell you how to tell how loud in our VocalQuickWinTip. And we have to know how if they change the words, if they sing the wrong verse, guess what you do? You sing the wrong verse. When they get back to the right verse, guess what? You get back to the right verse. Did you know that? I used to think that, and I didn't do this professionally. This is like so long for me to clue into that it should be the same, still the same job role. But I used to think in worship that if they sang the wrong words, my job was to sing the right words really loud so that I could help them get back on to the right words, right? I'll save you. I'll jump in there really loud. So wrong. I was so wrong. Our job is to be backed up from that audible sound that is the lead vocalist. If they see the wrong word, we copy them. Now, how do we know how to do that? We just sing like this the whole time and watch the leader, right? No, we can't do that. Just like I showed you in scanning lyrics in rehearsal, how to work it at home and then take it to rehearsal so that you can scan only the important things. If someone else is leading and you know they have trouble getting into that second verse, you might put a little star and know that I just need to glance, and your eyes will do it all once you get in the habit. You're worshiping the second verse. I always check just in case. You never know when someone's going to forget the words. Usually it's not planned. Sometimes it's lack of memory, and sometimes it's just they got distracted by something. So as the end of the verse, I'll be worshiping, and then I'll just do the swing and scoop, and I'll take a peek at the edge of their mouth. You don't have to look at your face. You're usually way back or way to the side. I just take a peek at their mouth, and I can tell what word they're going into. Did you know you could do that? Oh, this will be so much fun when you get back in your teams and you start watching your worship leader. And just know, even if most people don't know that this is a job of a backup singer, so don't expect a lot of pats on the back from anyone else. But when you do it and you start finding things to match, pat yourself on the back, because it's hard. But that is the job of a backup singer. The next thing that we have to do to be able to blend and really be a really good backup singer is to scale for sound. First, we remove all our vibrato. We make sure our notes are stable. Then we follow all their cutoffs. That means we follow their words, their rhythm. If they lay back on the beat, if they rush ahead, whatever they do, we match. Sometimes you can kind of do this by feel. You can feel them getting louder and you get louder. But sometimes you got to take a peek. What word are they going to say next? You can start the word, but if you start the word like Jesus instead of Jesus, if you start it softly and they say Father, they go, Father, I adore you. You can start, Father, I adore you. That's really how you correct. Because you've started soft, you can course correct if they go someplace else, because your job is to follow the leader. Scaling for sound. Think of a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being the softest a person can sing, 5 being the most powerfully a person can sing. I take that back. 1 being the lowest volume. We talked about how volume and power are different things. 5 being the loudest volume. When we think of where we're supposed to sit volume-wise, and this is not the sound guy or girl's job, by the way, this is the singer's job. The leader who is setting the melody and setting all that motion and leading the story is going to be at a 5, even if they're singing quiet. Imagine on a scale of 1 to 5, wherever they're singing is the 5. Your job is to be at a 4. Not to be at a 3, not a 2, not a 1. Your job is to be at a 4, but not get to 5. It's difficult. It really is. But it's fun to learn. I mean, I think everything's fun to learn. But so when you find yourself getting too loud, back off a little bit. You can cheat by backing off of the mic a little bit, but I'll tell you why that's not usually a great idea unless you're super close to your sound person. Probably not going to happen. When you back off, they're going to turn you up. The only thing you can do to prevent a whole soundboard fight with you backing off and getting strong and backing off and getting strong is to stay in the same place with your mic at all times and to turn your own volume down. Practice this at home. Practice singing your part at a 5 out of 5. Then practice singing your part at a 3 out of 5. And then find your 4. It has to be your 4. And then when you go to rehearsal, you already know how to back off from what feels like a 5 to you. And that's what you'll match. If you just go there and say, he's a 5, I'm going to try to be a 4, it's just not going to happen. It's one of those things you have to put into place when you practice. Strong singers, if you're like me, a really big loudmouth, it means you probably have thick vocal cords. Yay, doesn't mean anything. It means you probably do some things wrong longer before you get vocal damage, but by then you'll be convinced you're doing the right thing and you still get vocal damage. Just saying. If you're a loud, natural speaker, you're going to be a louder singer. That for you probably should aim at a 3. I aim for a 3.5 max because I can oversing every worship leader I've ever sung with. And sometimes we'll sing a duet and then I'll prove it to them. And then I realize the service is not a place to do that. And then I learn another hard lesson. But if you can sing louder than the person singing lead, temper yourself just a little bit more. And that will allow other people to come up in the blend too, because they're going to be aiming for a 4, a good strong 4. If you're a weak singer, and whether this means your notes fall apart, your vibrato gets ahead of you, or you just have a naturally soft speaking voice. A couple of people I've worked with have really soft speaking voices. Your power, your 5 is not somebody else's 5. It's a totally different 5. So for you, because you'll know if you speak a little softer than the people that are leading the song, if you got a loud mouth like me leading the song, then you need to probably be at your 5. But you really need to aim for 5 because most leaders are going to sing louder than you. If you're leading, you've got to make sure your 5 is improving so that you can get the most out of your voice. Now, it is not our job to match somebody else's 5 because we anatomically cannot physically do it. Everybody, like I said, every vocal cord is unique and works the same, but produces a slightly different sound, different amounts of power. This all has to do with what shape things are inside. You were created to have a completely unique voice because God wanted it that way. So stop trying to be like other singers. It was the most freeing lesson I ever learned. God wanted me to sing this way for a reason. Let me find out what's in my voice that he put there so that I can enjoy that instead of trying to be like somebody else I think is better. Because when you talk to those people you think are better, I'm a talker and I always ask them. I've always found out that they don't think they're so great because they don't like something else about their voice. So it's a never-ending aspiration to try to be someone else. Embrace who God has made you and find out where you can be to support those other singers. By a blend literally just means make sure your notes don't fall apart, take the vibrato out, and be one step below the leader so that their voice can shine. If you have a softer singer leading, guess what? If their 5 is your 3, that's still 5, and you have to back down 1. You just want to be one step below them. Then if the sound guy wants to turn you up more than them, or my number, probably 3 pet peeve for tech people, and I've been a tech person, so not hating. My number 3 pet peeve is when they turn the team down so much you can't hear them. There is not a singer on this face of the earth that can't get considerably better, but we will never get considerably better or ever want to if we can never hear that we made a contribution to that service. Cannot get an amen. It's the worst thing in the world. You've done all this work. You've practiced. You've done all these things, but for some reason, they decided something on the team is not blending well, so someone gave them the direction. We'll just turn them down a little bit in the mains. And it's like, why don't you just tell me not to show up and not waste my time then? It's really insulting. So if you're a worship leader at some point, remember that. Please, it's raise better singers. Raise better singers. It's not your job to train them. Send them to me and I'll do everything I can. But it is true that you unmotivate your singers and you many times start the process that we talked about from when a singer goes to committed to a team to quitting a team. A lot of times that starts with this thing that's happened a lot since we've moved to bigger production in churches, turning down the team. So make sure you get what you need in your monitors to hear what you need. That is your right. As a singer, you need to hear yourself in the monitors. If it's an in-ear on the floor, you need to hear yourself. You can't find a 4 out of 5 if you can't hear yourself. And when you find out that your company has said, oh, we came to church, it was really great, I couldn't hear you at all, try not to take it personally. And remember, we can all do a part to educate other people in our team. All right, are you ready for your Vocal Quick Win tip? I'm going to teach you how to check your blend. How good are you? Let's find out. 2 ways you can check your blend. Everything that we do as a singer, because this is a personal tool, it's stuck in our body, it's attached to everything. and even if it weren't, we have to work this at home. This is our responsibility on our own, is to check how we blend at home, because you won't hear this with other people singing. You just don't. Actually, you'll learn what you're missing when you hear other people messing up in your team when you get there. But first, you got to get your biggest obstacles out of the way. We do this by personally checking our blend, and that's how this works. With one sound, this does not have to be, it doesn't matter what note it is, doesn't matter what word it is, what song it is, none of that matters. It's just a road to run on. We're going to pick a sound. It could be la, but L is a soft consonant if you remember earlier, so that would be less easy. Pick a word like God or now. It doesn't matter. Pick a word that doesn't start with one of the things we talked about that are problems for every singer. H, F, TH. All those soft consonants, don't pick one of those because that'll undermine your capability and you'll feel disappointed in the results. Pick something like now. Do now. Any note. When you'll just say that word from time to time. Anytime you're thinking of it, you're vacuuming, cleaning up, working on the car, whatever. Sing a word like that on any note. Hold it out as long as you can. Just hold it out as long as you can and see what happens. When does it fall apart? Does it go into vibrato? How big does the vibrato get? Where does that happen? We have to, before we can start fixing our own obstacles, we have to be able to tell where they are, where they happen most often. Because where they happen most often on your own is where they're going to happen most often when you don't expect them. And if you know where they happen most often, you can be on guard to fix them with some of the tools I've already given you. When you go back to the episode on vocal power, vibrato, and reliable notes, I gave you some tips there about how to check those notes. Put that one into place. That will allow you to not only check your stability and control that vibrato, but also to check what level you're at. So if you do now, and I hold that for a really long time, I want to aim for a 5. And I want to check to see how stable the note is and that my vibrato stays out. If I tell it to be out, it should be out. And then I want to see if I can find a 3. No. And then I want to see if I can cut the difference. If you do not give your brain an audible example of what 5 is and what 1, 2, 3 is, what your biggest is and what your softer is, it literally cannot find a way to find the middle. So I can say, we're going to sing it a 4. And we all go, oh, it's like one of those tips they give you in choir and you go, I have no clue what that means, but sure, I'm going to pretend I did that. Yeah. Like a lot of tips we're given, right? Tips are useless unless we know how to find out where to use them, what to listen for, and how to prove it. So you prove this by holding out your 5, seeing how stable it is, using those other tips. Then do a softer version of that so that your brain goes, okay, I can now put that in my database as a softer, a 3. Now I know what a 4 is. And then try to find your 4. Now when you go to sing, generally we sing at a 3 to 4 out of our power range. None of these numbers matter at all. It's just I'm giving them to you as a road to run this example on. But sing the biggest you can. That is your 5. It's also helpful if you don't sing as loud as some of the people on your worship team. Just know that they got fat vocal cords. So you got thin ones. You can feel good about that. I got fat ones. Just is. When you go and you know that they're more powerful, you already know what your 5 is. That's important because if you start trying to sing over a 5 for you, this is a scale of 1 to 5. Guess what happens? Strain, pain, and eventual vocal damage if you do it too long the wrong way. So that's why you don't mess with that. If they need more of you and you're singing at a 5 and they're saying, we can't hear, we need more of you, politely ask them to turn your mic up. Say I'm at my max. Can you turn me up? It's totally fine to say that because unlike an electric guitar, a drum set, or anything else, we cannot keep hitting it harder without damage. We can't. So don't. Find your 5. That lets you know where comfortably your top power is so that you don't overextend yourself and put your actual anatomical voice at risk because you're trying to do something that your actual vocal muscle is not capable of doing and then feeling like a failure because it can't. Exactly. All right. Checking your solo blend. Write the number one thing down that keeps you from blending. You probably can think of this right now. When I think about how I blend on a worship team, whether it's someone's ever commented before, which is honestly really rare if someone's told you, stop doing this, it's usually good information, not always, but usually you don't hear it all. They turn you down in the mains, which is so insulting. It's like assuming you're just a horrible singer. We don't want to hear you. I don't know why you're here. As a singer, it's just really insulting. So when you find out Where is it that I really blend? Is it my power isn't where it needs to be? I need to learn what my 5 is so that I can sing. Those people who have a 5 that's twice as big as mine, that I can do the best that I'm doing to support that lead, set the stage for them. Or is it the vibrato? What is it? If I were you, I would write it down someplace in your journal, wherever you write things, Post-it note, put it on your door in your bathroom when you practice singing, and just write it down so that, again, if we have a visual reminder, a way to do it, and a way to test it, the information we put in our database is 3 times as strong. That means it's 3 times more likely to come out when we're singing. What is the number one thing that keeps me from blending well? Is it my volume? Is it my vibrato? Is it something else? Then when you practice it in a song, hum it first. And I don't mean hum it with an H, because H is our enemy. What if the mic is all the way up? That's a sound guy's problem, or girl. I've been a sound girl. Don't want to be sexist. If the mic is all the way up and they say, I need more of you, your only responsibility as a singer is to find your 5, is to find the strongest that you can be. And you'll find that out by doing some of the exercises we did in episode 2, and then doing what I'm just about to explain. You'll find your 5. Once you know you're singing at your 5, if they can't turn you up anymore, let that off your shoulders, even if they blame it on you. A lot of times they'll blame it on a singer because they just don't know any better. It's unfair, it's untrue, but they just don't know. So try not to let that take hold personally. It's very hard, I understand that. But understand that if you're at your 5, your job is done. And no matter what they say to you, say, I'm giving you all I've got. I've got a quieter voice. And Faith, I know that you have a quieter voice. So find your 5. That is your only responsibility. Now, if you're not sure you're at a 5, then that's partially your responsibility. It's part of your role as a backup singer. But if you're at your 5 and they can't get any more out of you, say, I'm sorry, that's all I can give. And if they continue to have a problem with it, they're going to need to update their equipment, because that is the purpose for equipment. It's not, the singer can only do so much. We usually don't do as much as we can because we don't know how. But if you're at your 5, you find your 5 and you know you're there, take it off your shoulders. It's no longer your responsibility. They'll figure it out eventually. If they want a 5, they're going to have to do something. Tell them, well, why don't you just let me sing all the solos? Because then everyone has to be one step below me. That's what I would do if I knew someone really, really well. And then I'd laugh really hard so they knew I was joking. Is that a good idea? No, probably not. Okay. When you practice your song, start the melody. That song, for some reason, da 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 da. Don't hum it with an HMMMM. But if you want to feel your vocal muscles squeeze and sustain it, then do it like a bumblebee. Kind of reminds me of, have you ever seen those people playing a saw with a cello bow? When you slide between it, here's what happens. If you'll go, we talked about why that little creak is really helpful earlier in an episode. But if we'll slide it really slow between those notes, guess what happens? We've taken our vocal muscle and we've said, engage. It's your job to make sound. And by the we've done that. When we slide it slow, we slow down the exercise that the muscle is supposed to follow so that it can learn. Singing songs at tempo every time does nothing but repeat sound and wears our voice out. It's one of the most useless tips you can get. Just sing the song over and over and over and over. Don't do that. Unlike a guitar, your voice will wear out. And if you're doing it wrong, it'll wear out faster, which means you have less time to fix anything. But if you can do this in the shower or around the house. It doesn't have to be practice time. Now hear how much more powerful that is than... If you want to know why, watch the other episodes. I told you exactly why that is the case. When you do that little bumblebee, in and out, bumblebees usually don't land. They go like this. That's why we slide between the notes. We give the muscle the action to come to work. The vocal muscle makes the sound, not the vocal cords, no matter what you've heard. Once we get it to work, we slow down what we're telling it to do so that it can stay connected. What's probably going to happen to most singers is it's going to break apart somewhere in there. Wherever it breaks apart, start again with a If you think about the bumblebee going, when we have to hold a note longer, he aims down, just presses in a little bit more. It literally takes your vocal muscle and squeezes it more. And that gives you more stability and more power. Okay? So we're going to find out what's keeping me from blending well. And then we're going to do the bumblebee humming exercise in the melody of the song before we work on the other parts, which we outlined a whole process for making each song really tell your personal spiritual story in another episode. So this would be something you do on your own before you're going to work that song. Now we've checked our vocal blend. Now we're going to go ahead and check our group blend. This gets to be fun. If you've worked on your own personal blend, what are my obstacles to being a united sound, not sticking out? Blend just means we all sound like a group sound. Nobody sticks out. It doesn't mean we all just get quiet or airy. When anyone tells you breathy or airy, please listen to the episode when I talked about vocal power last episode. Just ignore that one because that is undermining your power. Just smile and nod. When in doubt, smile and nod. Be respectful, smile and nod. Go with what you know is physically true, which most people just aren't plugged into the science enough to even be up on, and something you can anatomically prove. If those things are not true, you can't depend on it. So whatever you've heard, even if you have 3 degrees, whatever you've heard, the way to get to sound, if it doesn't include those 2 that you know absolutely is based on what people know now about the vocal anatomy, which is still very little, but a whole lot more than anyone's teaching. And 2, you can prove it by doing something in your voice. And it does it not just once, not just in one song, but every time in that action, all the time. You can get it to do that. That's provable. If that's true, then do that thing. If it's not true, put it in the probably gonna toss that out pile, like spring cleaning. Okay. In rehearsal, we're gonna check our group blend. In the other episodes, I talked about personal worship being our lamb. Each song is like a lamb that we prepare to bring to the offering. And when we get together in rehearsal, we talked about this in one of the previous episodes. When we get together in rehearsal, we're taking each of our individual lambs that we've prepared, we've grown, we've primped, we've done all the things we've done in the other episodes to make sure that our authentic worship is going to come out in every single song. It will guaranteed if you follow those steps. Absolutely, it will. And then we all bring our lambs together. This is kind of like where the flock meets together. We all bring our little lambs to the worship rehearsal. If you're not prepared and you haven't done some of the things or all the things we've talked about in this series, you're coming without a lamb. And you're expecting to present a lamb in the offering on Sunday, but it's show and tell time with your lamb and you didn't bring one. So if you feel unprepared, remember that feeling is that I did not prepare a lamb and I don't have one with me. If everybody has done, which we always hope everyone does, but eventually, inevitably somebody hasn't. That's not our job. Our job is not to see what other lamb someone brought. But when we bring our lamb, we've prepared it, doing all the other things we've talked about, to our worship rehearsal. First of all, those people that haven't, start noticing that they're empty-handed. It really does, in a matter of months, really start improving your team. You'll find some people over months, if you'll do this, if you're the only person that does it, some people will start to notice they're missing something to the point where they'll leave team because of that process I explained about why we go from being plugged into quitting. That starts because they don't know what's wrong. They don't know they're missing the lamb. So just send them to this series and then they can get back plugged in. But people that come into the team, when they see that example, even from one person, they see the result of it, which is your personal worship and your ability to blend better, and they want to do what you're doing. And they'll probably ask you, and then you can share. When we corral our lambs together in our worship rehearsal, this is not time for learning words. It's not time for learning your parts. It's not time to figure out what your story is in this song. That time is ended. It's time. Your lamb is done. You can do no more. Bring your lamb to worship rehearsal. This is a time when we bring our lambs together and then we set them all together and we say, okay, we need to primp. This lamb needs to stand next to that lamb and this lamb is too big, so put him on his knees. We make them a unified offering. We put them together as a unified offering. So anything that you are responsible for on your own, your time is done. Now it's just time to iron out the differences, what happens when we bring all of our individual offerings together. So if you're prepared, and you've done those other things, you come to team rehearsal, and this does not mean the run through before the service, but the actual rehearsal, then you can listen to what you've practiced in the atmosphere of those other singers. Now you might find that your lead singer is not, their 5 is not as strong as you thought it would be. And unless you have a traditionally quiet voice, you might be able to back down a little bit. How would you be able to do that? Because on your own, you have experienced and practiced how to find your 5, your 3, and where the middle is. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And believe it or not, it eventually becomes instantaneous. I need a 3. I need a 2. I need a 4. We can go 1 to 10 and find a number between, and it just goes there. Not because you learned some super smart tip on some YouTube channel, but because you tried at home the exercises I gave you, and you found what it feels like for your vocal anatomy, individual as it is, to reach a 5. You've experienced what a 3 is. The more you do that and give your brain those references audibly and physically, the more they'll be able to pull them up when you go to rehearsal. That's why we have to do the personal part first. Once you hear what you've prepared in that group setting, then you adjust. You say, their 5 is way bigger than I thought. Maybe they changed singers last minute. That 5 is way bigger than I thought. That means my 4 is going to have to bump up. That probably, if I were that person, when I go home, I'm working on reassessing my 5 and trying to build my 5 more powerfully. So you find out what you've done, how it fits into what is going to happen during the service, and then you tweak your part for that, because you can't find that out until you get together. And if you find that there's a certain part that your vibrato wobbles, things you thought fixed. I went through this on my own. It was fine. I'm really ready. You get to rehearsal and stuff that shouldn't show up starts showing up. That's because of nerves. Nerves are always there, regardless of how good you are or how long you've done it. And they will start weakening that. They'll tell the muscle to back off. That's functionally what happens. When we're nervous, our brain gets distracted. The brain stops sending the signal to the vocal muscle to do its job. So understand that your 5 at home is going to be a 4, maybe sometimes a 3 once you get around other people. That's why we're always working on our power to make our 5 super solid, so that we have that freedom to adjust for nerves. All right. Real quick, I want to thank Barbara Ann Holmes for this suggestion. She suggested that maybe we do a once a week online class with a bunch of singers. Maybe we'll do it for $50 a person, do 4 of them in a month. If you're interested in doing that, we get enough people interested, I'll be happy to do that for you. Please leave it in the comments if you're interested. If there's not enough interest, I'll move on to what I got next for you, okay? Also, tomorrow, I need some comments, because tomorrow I'm going to tell worship leaders what worship singers wish they knew. And I've been a little slow getting the edited episodes up here on YouTube, so we're a little short on time to get comments. So those of you here today, would you please leave me a comment? And if it's not your own personal one, leave one that someone else has told you what we wish our worship leader knew. Maybe it's not your current worship leader. Maybe it's one you've had in the past. You wish all worship leaders knew X. What's the best worship leader you've had? What makes them different from the ones that weren't that great? What all worship leaders need to know that you want them to know? I'm going to do that tomorrow, and I can't do that without you. So please leave me comments. Before I give you how to put all of these episodes in action to make all of this good stuff happen for your voice and your worship team, I want you to know that I pray for you worship singers all the time. I'll pray for all my singers, but worship leading as a singer, whether you're doing backup or lead, and backup is harder than lead, it is a very unique opportunity for a singer. It's literally what we were built to do. Not just sing, not even just sing well, not sing uniquely, because God created everything unique in your voice, but to do it in the process of celebrating joy in life. But that's true. We use it for all of those things. But the goal in God creating that voice in you was to musically express when we bring our lamb forward in the service and we lay our offering down and we let God do what he wants to do. That is a huge, huge thing beyond any responsibility a singer that's touring the world can have. It's a huge opportunity. It's a huge responsibility. And there are so many little things that keep worship singers from really experiencing what God has for them in that process, to allow us to be part of that process of him setting the offering off flame in front of everybody. That we get to be a part of that, bringing that to the platform and laying that offering down is so cool. that if we can remove these little obstacles that keep us from participating in that, being a really live part of that as a team and an individual, we are missing out on so much that God has for us. Not only that, but our congregation is missing out on so much that God has for them. They don't get to see that process happen. But you alone can make that change. It may take a day, it may take 3 weeks, it may take months. It depends on what part you do, and honestly, how obstinate the rest of your team is. But I've done it time and time again, and I've had other worship singers do it, and it does start changing your team. So let me tell you how to put all these things in order. I'm going to tell you what you learned in each episode so that you can go back and, oh, thank you, Melissa. I'm going to tell you all of the things in order that I've taught you and where you'll find them. In episode 1, I taught you about how to make sure that you are fit for the worship team. What is it to be fit for the worship team? I don't just mean singing. If you're reassessing if I should be a part of the team or not, listen to episode 1. Because episode 1 will tell you what they don't teach you in worship conferences. Not just you should do this and you have to do that. You have to have a heart of worship and you have to love God and you have to bring your personal walk. Those things are all true. Nothing wrong with any of those things. But how do we make that happen in an actionable way? I've tried to do that in episode 1 for you. If you don't pass the test in episode 1, you don't have to listen to the rest because it's probably not the right time for you to be on worship team. Episode number 2, how do you tackle your biggest problem? And this is singers' biggest problem all the time, regardless of if you are a good singer or you don't think of yourself as a good singer, and that is confidence. There's always things that really just hit our confidence at the knees. In episode 2, I helped you with some actionable tips to gain confidence, to understand what it really is, and I gave you a couple examples of 2 major stars that should have been, you'd think, are really confident, but we're missing one of the elements and what happened in their careers because of it. That's in episode 2. In episode number 3, I taught you how to functionally make every single song that you sing, even if it's the 100th time, a really genuine, authentic connection point from your heart to the hearts of the people that you're singing for. How do you make that happen every single time in every single song? I walked you through an action plan I give my pro singers, and that's in episode 3. In episode 4, I taught you how to remove the wonky notes, stability, how to make sure those notes always show up when you ask them to, because they should, and vibrato, how you get one if you don't have one, because it's a jewel. You want to put it in there when you're soloing, but how do you stabilize it and make it stop when you say so? Because that is essential to the blend of the team. Every person that, even if they've only sung lead their entire life or only been a worship leader for their entire adult life, needs to know how to do this. Because there will always be times when you back up another singer. There should be. And this is a skill every singer needs to have. That's in episode 4. In episode 5, we talked about the breathy, airy thing that is the number one direction from worship leaders and power singing. And I told you why one of those things is killing voices like none other. One of those things, actually part of 2 of those things, is the reason that worship singers, primarily worship leaders, they sing more, have the most vocal surgery now than any other kind of singer. And I explained that in episode 5. And today was episode 6, and that is how to become a power team. Even if you feel like you are the only one that even cares about it. If you put the things in action that I have taught you today, I promise you, God is really going to honor what your heart is doing. You're going to get better at singing, which is going to build your confidence and all these other things we've talked about. But it is going to begin to challenge the people on your team. And that is going to begin to raise the quality. Or I was talking about excellence in the church. We want to be excellent. But how? Follow the series. I hope those are great actionable tips for you. Thank you so much for everybody that joined us live. Make sure that you leave me your comment on what you wish worship leaders knew. I really, really need those today because I'm writing them for tomorrow. Okay? And please like this video, subscribe if you haven't. That just lets me know that you like this kind of stuff. I'll do more of it. And when you click the bell, it lets you know when I post a new video because sometimes it changes and you won't know. All right? I don't want you to miss anything good. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I love you. I appreciate you. I am always praying for you. We are on one global team. Our world could use worship now more than ever before. Worship starts personally. So if your church hasn't opened up yet, like our churches haven't here in Seattle, start that worship at home. You'll be so ready for when you go to your church. Love you guys. See you tomorrow with what worship singers wish their worship leaders knew at 11 o'clock Pacific time. Bye-bye.